If you want to understand why your blood sugar remains persistently elevated, even when you are eating less and exercising more, the answer is not a lack of discipline. The real issue often lies deeper, in a type of fat you cannot see, visceral fat. This hidden, metabolically active fat accumulates around vital organs such as the liver, pancreas, and intestines, silently disrupting normal physiological function. Let me be very clear about something that may surprise you. You can appear lean, maintain a normal body weight, and still carry dangerous levels of visceral fat that impair your metabolic health. In clinical medicine, we refer to this as TOFI, thin outside, fat inside. It is far more common than most people realize, affecting a significant portion of adults who assume they are healthy simply because their weight falls within a normal range. Throughout my years in clinical practice, I have encountered many patients who exercise regularly, followed what they believed to be a healthy diet, and yet struggled with unexplained elevations in blood sugar. In many of these cases, the underlying issue was not visible fat, but rather this concealed accumulation surrounding their internal organs. This type of fat does not just sit passively. It actively interferes with insulin signaling, increases inflammation, and places continuous stress on the body's metabolic systems. What is particularly concerning is that visceral fat can impair the pancreas's ability to produce and regulate insulin effectively, while also affecting the liver's role in glucose metabolism. Over time, this creates a cycle where blood sugar levels remain elevated despite lifestyle efforts that would otherwise be effective. However, there is an important point I want you to understand. Insulin resistance is not an irreversible condition. Contrary to what many people believe, it is not simply a slow, inevitable process that occurs over decades without the possibility of meaningful intervention. The human body is highly adaptable, and metabolic pathways can respond quickly, sometimes within days, when given the right support. In fact, there is one specific fruit, widely available and often overlooked, that has been shown in peer-reviewed clinical studies to help reduce visceral fat and improve insulin sensitivity. This fruit contains a unique combination of bioactive compounds, including antioxidants, polyphenols, and natural fibers, which work together at the cellular level to enhance glucose uptake and reduce inflammatory signaling. From a physiological standpoint, these compounds help activate key metabolic pathways, including those involved in insulin receptor sensitivity and mitochondrial function. In simpler terms, they help your cells listen to insulin again, allowing glucose to move out of the bloodstream and into the cells where it can be used for energy. What makes this particularly powerful is how quickly the body can begin to respond. When used correctly and consistently, many individuals begin to see measurable improvements in blood sugar regulation within as little as 7 days. This is not due to a miracle effect, but rather the restoration of normal metabolic communication within the body. Hi, I'm Dr. Susan Miller. I am an emergency medicine physician and a researcher specializing in metabolic health. On the 365 Health Guide channel, my work is focused on bridging the critical gap between acute crisis care and long-term metabolic stability. After nearly 15 years of treating patients in emergency settings, I began to notice a consistent and troubling pattern. Many individuals were not arriving due to sudden accidents or isolated events, but as a result of preventable metabolic breakdown, conditions that had been silently progressing for years. This led me to focus intensely on one fundamental question. Why do some individuals accumulate visceral fat so aggressively, almost as if their bodies are designed to store it, while others remain lean with minimal effort? The answer, as I discovered through both clinical experience and scientific literature, is far more complex than simple calorie intake or exercise frequency. What truly determines this process occurs deep within your cells, particularly in your fat tissue and liver. It involves a metabolic pathway known as lipid oxidation regulation, the system responsible for determining whether your body stores fat or actively breaks it down for energy. This system acts almost like a switch. When it is turned on, your body efficiently burns stored fat. When it is turned off, fat accumulation, especially visceral fat, accelerates, regardless of how disciplined your lifestyle may appear on the surface. What is particularly striking is that certain naturally occurring compounds found in specific foods have the ability to directly influence this metabolic switch. Some compounds activate lipid oxidation, enhancing your body's ability to mobilize and utilize stored fat, while others, or the absence of these compounds, allow the system to remain suppressed. Unfortunately, many people unknowingly maintain daily habits that keep this fat-burning mechanism locked in the off position. The fruit I am about to discuss plays a pivotal role in reversing this process. It contains a unique profile of bioactive compounds that have been shown in clinical studies to reactivate lipid oxidation pathways, particularly within the liver. This is crucial because the liver serves as a central hub for metabolic regulation, influencing blood sugar control, fat storage, and overall energy balance. In this comprehensive guide, I will explain why visceral fat is fundamentally different from subcutaneous fat, the type you can see and pinch, and why conventional dieting strategies often fail to eliminate it. Unlike subcutaneous fat, visceral fat is hormonally active and closely linked to insulin resistance, systemic inflammation, and increased cardiovascular risk. It requires a targeted, biology-driven approach rather than generalized calorie restriction. I will also introduce the specific fruit that has been studied using advanced imaging techniques such as DEXA scans, which provide precise measurements of deep abdominal fat, not just superficial changes reflected on a scale. These findings offer a far more accurate understanding of how the body responds at a structural and metabolic level. In addition, I will walk you through 4 key biological mechanisms activated by this fruit. These include enhanced mitochondrial function, improved insulin receptor sensitivity, reduced inflammatory signaling, and increased fatty acid mobilization. Together, these processes create an internal environment where fat loss and metabolic repair can occur simultaneously. Equally important is how you incorporate this fruit into your daily routine. I will provide the exact amount and preparation method that preserves and maximizes its active compounds, because even small variations in how it is consumed can significantly impact its effectiveness. Finally, I will share 4 clinical strategies that I routinely recommend to my patients to accelerate results within the first week, along with 4 common mistakes that can completely negate the benefits, errors that many individuals are unknowingly making right now. Understanding the internal warehouse. Let me explain what visceral fat actually is, because most people have a completely inaccurate mental picture of it. When people think of body fat, they usually imagine the soft layer just beneath the skin, the kind you can pinch around your waist or thighs. This is known as subcutaneous fat. While excessive amounts are not ideal, it is relatively passive in nature. Its primary role is to store energy, and metabolically, it does not aggressively interfere with your body's internal systems. Visceral fat, however, is fundamentally different. To understand it clearly, think of your abdominal cavity as an industrial warehouse. Inside this space are your most critical organs, your liver, pancreas, kidneys, and intestines, each performing essential, tightly regulated functions to keep your body alive and balanced. Now imagine that this warehouse is gradually being filled with a dense, expanding foam. At first, everything appears to function normally. The machinery continues to run, and there are no obvious warning signs. But over time, that foam begins to press against every structure. It wraps around delicate components, restricts movement, interferes with communication pathways, and alters the entire internal environment. That is exactly how visceral fat behaves. It does not simply occupy space. It is a highly active endocrine tissue, meaning it constantly releases chemical signals into your body. Among these are pro-inflammatory molecules known as adipokines. These substances are not harmless byproducts. They actively disrupt normal metabolic processes. What makes this even more concerning is where these signals are delivered. Visceral fat releases them directly into the portal vein, the major blood vessel that carries nutrients and signals straight to your liver. As a result, your liver is continuously exposed to a stream of inflammatory messages. Over time, this persistent chemical stress begins to impair its function. One of the earliest and most critical changes is the liver's reduced responsiveness to insulin. In clinical terms, this is the beginning of insulin resistance. This is a point many people misunderstand. Insulin resistance does not start in isolation within the muscles or the pancreas. In many cases, it begins in the liver, overwhelmed by the biochemical interference generated by visceral fat. As the liver becomes less responsive, it continues to release glucose into the bloodstream even when it is not needed, leading to chronically elevated blood sugar levels. From there, a cascade of metabolic dysfunction follows. The pancreas is forced to produce more insulin to compensate, cells throughout the body become less responsive, and over time, this can progress toward prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Understanding this internal warehouse is critical because it shifts the focus away from what you can see in the mirror to what is happening inside your body. Visceral fat is not just a storage issue, it is a metabolic disruptor, actively driving inflammation, hormonal imbalance, and long-term disease risk. The avocado, a pharmacological powerhouse. Now, this is where the avocado enters the picture. Despite often being dismissed as simply a high-fat fruit, the avocado is, in precise scientific terms, a pharmacologically complex food that directly targets the metabolic chain of events we have just discussed. It is not just a source of calories. It is a delivery system for bioactive compounds that influence how your body stores and utilizes fat at a cellular level. In clinical nutrition, we evaluate foods not only by their macronutrient content, but by their biological effects. Avocados are uniquely rich in monounsaturated fatty acids, particularly oleic acid, along with fiber, potassium, and a spectrum of polyphenols. These compounds work synergistically to reduce inflammation, improve insulin signaling, and regulate lipid metabolism, three critical factors in controlling visceral fat accumulation. Researchers at the University of Illinois observed something particularly compelling when they conducted a controlled study involving adults with increased abdominal fat. Participants were instructed to consume 1 avocado daily over a period of 12 weeks. Using DEXA imaging, the gold standard for accurately measuring body composition, the results revealed a meaningful reduction in visceral adiposity among those who included avocado in their daily diet compared to a matched control group. It is important to emphasize this distinction. The participants did not simply lose overall body weight, they experienced a targeted reduction in visceral fat, the most dangerous form of fat from a metabolic standpoint. This is a critical difference because traditional weight loss methods often reduce subcutaneous fat while leaving visceral fat relatively unchanged. From a physiological perspective, the mechanisms behind this effect are well supported. The healthy fats in avocado help modulate insulin response, preventing sharp spikes in blood sugar that can drive fat storage. At the same time, its high fiber content slows digestion, promotes satiety, and supports gut health, an increasingly recognized factor in metabolic regulation. Additionally, the antioxidants and plant compounds found in avocados help reduce oxidative stress within the liver. This is particularly important because the liver plays a central role in determining whether fat is stored or burned. By improving liver function and reducing inflammatory signaling, avocado consumption helps shift the body toward a more efficient fat-burning state. In essence, what makes the avocado so powerful is not a single nutrient, but the combination of multiple active compounds working together to influence key metabolic pathways. It addresses the root cause of visceral fat accumulation rather than simply masking its effects. What is the avocado doing at the cellular level? To truly understand the impact of avocado on metabolic health, we need to look beyond nutrition labels and examine what is happening inside your cells. The effects are not superficial, they are deeply biochemical. There are 4 primary mechanisms through which avocado exerts its influence, each targeting a critical point in the development of visceral fat and insulin resistance. Mechanism 1, oleic acid and the PPR alpha switch. Avocados are composed of approximately 71% monounsaturated fat, with oleic acid as the dominant component. This is not just a healthy fat, it is a signaling molecule. Oleic acid has the unique ability to bind to a nuclear receptor inside your liver and fat cells known as PPAR alpha, peroxisome proliferator activated receptor alpha. You can think of PPAR alpha as a master metabolic switch. When it is activated, your body shifts from storing fat to actively burning it. Specifically, it enhances the breakdown of triglycerides stored in visceral fat deposits, converting them into usable energy. In clinical terms, this process is known as increased lipid oxidation. Many diets fail because they never activate this pathway effectively. Oleic acid helps turn that system back on. Mechanism 2. Soluble fiber and the gut-liver axis. One medium avocado contains approximately 13 to 14 grams of total fiber, including about 5 grams of soluble fiber, such as pectin. This type of fiber plays a crucial role in what we call the gut-liver axis, a communication network between your digestive system and your liver. When soluble fiber is fermented by beneficial gut bacteria, it produces short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate. These compounds travel directly to the liver through the portal vein. But unlike the inflammatory signals produced by visceral fat, these are regulatory and anti-inflammatory. The result is a reduction in hepatic inflammation and an improvement in insulin sensitivity. In practical terms, this means your liver becomes more responsive to insulin again. It stops overproducing glucose and begins to regulate blood sugar more efficiently. This alone can significantly reduce the metabolic burden that leads to fat accumulation. Mechanism 3. Avocado B and mitochondrial health. Avocados contain a rare compound called avocado B, a fatty alcohol found in very few foods. Research has shown that avocado B directly targets dysfunctional fat metabolism within cells, particularly at the level of the mitochondria, the structures responsible for energy production. In metabolically impaired cells, certain pathways become inefficient, leading to the buildup of harmful byproducts such as ceramides. These substances interfere with insulin signaling, essentially blocking the message that tells cells to absorb glucose. Avocado B helps interrupt this dysfunctional pathway. By reducing ceramide accumulation, it clears the internal noise that disrupts cellular communication. As a result, glucose uptake improves and cells regain their ability to use energy effectively. This is a critical step in reversing insulin resistance at its core. Mechanism 4. Lutein and inflammatory suppression. Avocados are also one of the richest sources of lutein among commonly consumed fruits. While lutein is often associated with eye health, its role in metabolic regulation is equally important. Lutein acts as a powerful inhibitor of NF-κB, a key transcription factor that controls the production of inflammatory cytokines. When NF-κB is overactive, it drives chronic, low-grade inflammation, a central contributor to visceral fat accumulation and metabolic disease. By suppressing this pathway, lutein helps calm the inflammatory environment within the body. This reduction in inflammation not only slows the progression of visceral fat buildup, but also supports overall metabolic recovery. Taken together, these 4 mechanisms illustrate why avocado is far more than a simple food. It functions as a targeted metabolic intervention, addressing fat storage, inflammation, insulin resistance, and cellular energy production simultaneously. The 7-day precision protocol based on my clinical experience. This is the protocol I recommend to patients who want to initiate a rapid and measurable metabolic reset. The goal is not just to eat healthier, but to strategically activate the biological pathways responsible for reducing visceral fat and restoring insulin sensitivity. First, the therapeutic dose. Consume 1 whole avocado daily, divided across 2 meals, half with your first meal and the other half with your largest meal of the day. A medium avocado provides approximately 320 calories, along with a dense concentration of metabolically active compounds. One critical point: do not reduce other foods to compensate for these calories. Clinical data supporting avocado's benefits are based on its addition to an existing diet, not substitution. The metabolic effect comes from what avocado introduces into your system, not from caloric restriction. Next is the citric acid catalyst. Add freshly squeezed lime or lemon juice to each serving. This is not simply for taste. Citric acid plays a stabilizing role during digestion, helping preserve sensitive compounds, particularly lutein, from oxidative breakdown. By protecting these molecules, you significantly increase their bioavailability, allowing more of them to reach systemic circulation and exert their anti-inflammatory effects at the cellular level. The third component is olive oil synergy. Drizzle your avocado with 1 teaspoon of high-quality extra virgin olive oil. Olive oil contains oleocanthal, a naturally occurring compound known for its anti-inflammatory properties. What makes this step important is synergy. Oleocanthal works through complementary pathways to those activated by avocado's nutrients, amplifying the overall reduction in inflammatory signaling. This is not about flavor enhancement. It is a targeted biochemical strategy. The fourth step is the fiber companion. Pair your avocado with at least 1 cup of fiber-rich foods, such as legumes or leafy greens. This supports the gut microbiome, which plays a central role in metabolic regulation. The production of beneficial short-chain fatty acids like butyrate depends on having a diverse range of fermentable fibers. Without this, the gut-liver signaling pathway remains suboptimal, and one of the key mechanisms for improving insulin sensitivity is weakened. Finally, the dark green rule. Most people discard one of the most nutrient-dense portions of the avocado without realizing it. The darker green layer, just beneath the skin, contains significantly higher concentrations of lutein, up to 3 times more than the lighter interior. Take a few extra seconds to gently scrape this layer before discarding the peel. From a clinical perspective, this small adjustment can meaningfully increase the anti-inflammatory impact of your intake. When followed consistently for 7 days, this protocol begins to shift the internal metabolic environment. Patients often report improved satiety, more stable energy levels, and early signs of better blood sugar control. These are not random effects. They reflect underlying changes in how the body processes fat, responds to insulin, and regulates inflammation at its core. Common mistakes that erase progress. In my 15 years of clinical practice, I have consistently observed a small set of mistakes that prevent patients from achieving meaningful metabolic improvement. These errors may seem minor on the surface, but physiologically, they can completely cancel out the benefits of even the most well-designed nutritional strategy. The first is what I call the condiment fallacy. Many people treat avocado as an occasional topping, adding a few thin slices to a salad several times a week, and expect significant results. This approach is insufficient. The metabolic mechanisms we discussed require a full therapeutic dose. Without consuming 1 whole avocado daily, the concentration of active compounds is simply too low to trigger meaningful changes in lipid oxidation, inflammation, and insulin sensitivity. The second mistake is the scale trap. One of the most common sources of frustration is the expectation of immediate weight loss reflected on a home scale. However, visceral fat reduction does not always translate into rapid changes in total body weight, especially in the early stages. As liver function improves and insulin sensitivity begins to normalize, the body may temporarily store more glycogen in muscle tissue along with the water that accompanies it. This can mask fat loss. For this reason, I advise patients to measure their waist circumference at the level of the navel rather than relying solely on the scale. This provides a far more accurate reflection of changes in visceral fat. Another critical mistake involves pairing avocado with high-sugar foods, what I refer to as the sweetener problem. Combining avocado with honey, sweetened smoothies, or flavored yogurt creates a metabolic contradiction. While avocado works to stabilize blood sugar and improve insulin response, added sugars trigger a rapid insulin spike that undermines these benefits. From a physiological standpoint, this is equivalent to pressing the accelerator and the brake at the same time. To preserve its therapeutic effect, avocado should be consumed in savory forms without added sugars. Finally, inconsistency is one of the most overlooked barriers to success. The gut microbiome, an essential player in metabolic health, requires consistent daily nourishment to adapt and produce beneficial compounds such as butyrate. Skipping days, especially during the initial phase, disrupts this process and prevents the establishment of a stable microbial environment. Without this foundation, one of the key pathways for improving insulin sensitivity and reducing inflammation remains underdeveloped. When these mistakes are corrected, the body is able to respond as intended. What often appears to be a lack of progress is, in reality, the result of subtle but critical missteps that interfere with the underlying biology. Accumulating visceral fat and developing insulin resistance are not inevitable consequences of aging. While many people are led to believe that these conditions are simply part of getting older and can only be managed with medication, the scientific evidence tells a very different story. The research discussed on the 365 Health Guide channel consistently shows that these processes are dynamic, reversible, and highly responsive to targeted lifestyle and nutritional interventions. From a clinical perspective, What matters most is understanding that your body is not passively declining. The metabolic systems responsible for fat regulation and glucose control remain active throughout your life. The mechanisms I have described, PPAR-alpha activation, gut microbiome modulation, and mitochondrial restoration, are not limited to youth. They are functional right now, continuously operating in the background, waiting for the correct biological signals to guide them. When these pathways receive the right inputs, the body begins to shift. Fat oxidation increases, inflammation decreases, and insulin signaling improves. This is not theoretical. It is observable in clinical settings and supported by a growing body of research. What often appears to be a fixed condition is, in reality, a reflection of how these systems have been influenced over time. One of the most important messages I want you to take away is this: you have far more control over your metabolic health than you may have been told. Small, consistent, evidence-based changes can reactivate these internal pathways and begin to reverse the processes that lead to chronic disease. The body is designed to adapt, repair, and respond when given the opportunity. If this information has been helpful to you, consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps the 365 Health Guide channel continue to reach individuals who are searching for clear, science-based health guidance. And if you know someone who believes their rising blood sugar or increasing waistline is simply due to age, share this with them. Access to accurate information can be the first step toward meaningful change. I'm Dr. Susan Miller, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.